some banks are pulling back, and so some customers have noticed banks tightening terms fairly significantly. But I think banks are ready to lend.
What do you hear? I think this is a terrible, sad circumstance in our country when your hometown banker says it's no longer worth the regulatory cost, the fingerprinting of my employees, to make a loan to somebody who lives in our town.
Because we no longer can afford the regulations. It's no longer fun to be a banker, and the cost of being a small community bank now exceeds our ability to generate the revenues necessary to get a return on investment. So my question is it true, based upon what you're telling me about how you account for community banks, that there are no more regulated or no higher standard of regulations or regulatory burden today than there was just in the past?
There are more regulations, and it's more complex, so they aren't imagining that.
What will the regulators think of this loan? They have entered into our decisions on what is best for our communities.
That we're seeing, in my view, the demise of something that's very important to the life of a community, and the idea that you can't go to your hometown banker and get a home loan is hugely troublesome to me.
Businesses depend on community banks. Community banks, small banks, those banks are not lending.
And I think there's a tremendous consequence to our economy, including job creation, in the failure of our banks being comfortable in making loans.
But we'll see some improvement in bank lending, and we're going to continue to follow that carefully. It's a very high priority for us.
My question is, while we talk about treating differently community banks, the evidence, at least from my view, does not seem to be there. What are we missing? What needs to take place?
But I do think this is a real issue and could have an adverse impact.
I know that Chairman Bernanke and Chairman Bair and the acting controller of the currency, John Walsh, are aware of this and are continuing to try to look for ways they can try to make sure their examiners bring the appropriate degree of balance to these judgments and don't overcorrect.
I intend to introduce legislation today that would reform the structure of the CFPB by subjecting it to an appropriations process and replacing the single director structure with a 5-person commission, similar to the SEC, CFTC, and a host of other federal agencies. While my concerns with Dodd-Frank extend beyond the structure of CFPB, this legislation, I believe, is a good first step to making sure Congress has the necessary oversight of such a powerful agency.
That bankers continue to suggest that the ability to make loans is significantly hampered by the regulatory environment. Those regulations are not keeping them from making bad loans, they're keeping them from making good loans.